over and over again, I must say I am extremely disappointed. Disappointed as a speaker because there are issues glaring at Kenyans today that those who had expectations would have wished that the president addressed this nation on those issues. The speaker, I will mention only 2 or 3. On the matter of the cost of living, Mr. Speaker, and I said I would find a way of navigating that issue of the fertilizer because you are yet to make a ruling on it. But Mr. Speaker, allow me to say that the mention of this subsidy from 6,500 to 2,500, the Speaker, even if that were to be true, is too little at a time like this to be the only thing that the President of a republic mentions when it comes to addressing the issues of the cost of living. I've said many times, Mr. Speaker, that there are people in this region, Kenyans in this country, who don't use fertilizer to grow crops. People who don't use fertilizer to keep their animals, their poultry. And so, Mr. Speaker, if the only serious matter that the President could speak about on bringing down the cost of living was the issue of the fertilizer, then, Mr. Speaker, it is too little to talk about. I would have said a few other things about it, Mr. Speaker, because I'm waiting your ruling. I will stop there. But I will remind the President and this administration that the cost of living, Mr. Speaker, is such a serious issue in this country that as I comment on the address of the President today, the Speaker, there are millions of Kenyans who are unable to make their ends meet. There are millions of Kenyans who are unable to place a meal on the table for their children. The Speaker, there are millions of students in this country who are confused, Mr. Speaker. We have students in our universities who are unable to even sit exams because there is confusion on the system of education that we are using and the system of funding for university education. These are issues, Mr. Speaker, that should have attracted the attention of the President, should have made, should have gotten a pride of place in the speech of the President. Mr. Speaker, on the issue of inclusivity, as required in Article 10 of the Constitution. And this, Mr. Speaker, I say with a lot of seriousness. A few months ago, we concluded the recruitment of servicemen and women.
What is the point of order, Senator Boni?
Accuracy of speech. Is the senator of Kitui, in order to mislead the Republic, who might not have followed the President's speech during the joint sitting, that the President did not highlight the important matter of education? Indeed, Mr. Speaker, he did so in bullet 53, 54, 55, and finally, Mr. Speaker, bullets 56, 57, 58, 59, and 60. Is he in order?
Honorable Senator, you've made some
Yes.
allegations to the fact that the President did not mention anything concerning education. And the Senator for Kakamega has drawn your attention to those paragraphs that indeed His Excellency the President took time to explain.
Mr. Speaker, I don't know whether the senator for Kakamega has already made his contribution on this matter, but that's fine. The speaker, because I have my time to make my contribution, if he listened to my opening statements, I said that this is not just an act of ticking boxes and telling people who are starving that you know you are starving. They already know. What I'm talking about is providing solutions to the challenges that face our university education, our secondary education, our system of education, our system of funding of our education system. Those are the things I'm talking about. Not just mentioning that these things are happening, because we already know that there is a problem. We are looking for solutions. The Speaker, on the issue of the inclusivity as required in Article 10 of the Constitution, I was saying that a few months ago, there was a recruitment of servicemen and women to join the Kenya Defense Forces. I raised a question on the floor of this House, seeking to know why the sub-county called Tharaka in Kitui County had been denied an opportunity to have a recruitment center for the servicemen and women joining the KDF. Mr. Speaker, to date, it has not occurred to the chairman of security, and he's not here, and his members, that was a question, a statement that had timelines, and it needed to be addressed before the recruitment was done, so that we afford our young people an opportunity to present themselves for recruitment. Mr. Speaker, I will be requesting this House, on account of the requirement by law, by the Constitution, that the President must be guided by the principle of inclusivity when it comes to access to opportunities in this country. I will be requesting the Speaker that we do a proper audit of the recruitment of the KDF, the past recruitment of KDF, so that we establish regional balance. How many young people from each region were accorded the opportunities to be recruited in the KDF? I say this as a Speaker because I know this is not an isolated case. I had conversations with my brother, my colleague, my neighbor, the senator for Tana River, and I know he had a similar challenge, where a section of his people were denied an opportunity to present themselves for recruitment. Mr. Speaker, if we allow these things to continue, then what will happen is that at the end of the day, we will have regions of this country that have provided young people to serve in the military, and other regions that are denied that opportunity. The Speaker, on the matter of...
Senator Wambua,
yes.
The Senator from Migori wishes to inform you. Are you amenable?
I'm okay. You can inform me.
Proceed, Senator Eddie.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. The issue that the Senator of Kitui has raised is a very close issue to my heart. The issue around inclusivity, not only in the recruitment of KDF, but also in the general recruitment in the public sector. And I wanted to inform the Senator of Kitui that I actually have two statements that I've forwarded to the relevant committees. One, I did forward to the CS, the Committee on Labor, to scan and give us that proper audit on public service, the entire public service of the country. And yesterday, I also did submit a statement here for the Ministry of Defense to give us exactly how this recruitment were done. These two statements, when they'll be given in the House, so that we can be able to do that audit with the information that will come from these two ministries. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Senator Eddy. I will indeed take more than passing interest in the response to those statements. And Mr. Speaker, while at that, because I have the floor, Mr. Speaker, we must also find, either administratively or otherwise, a way of getting chairpersons of committees to fast-track responses to statements. Because it doesn't help to respond to a statement 1 year after a statement was sought. The Speaker, I will conclude my remarks on the matter of food prices. And so that Senator Halwale does not accuse me of not reading the statement, I want to take an excerpt from the President's address and ask questions from that excerpt. The Speaker, in paragraph 17, the President says that as a result of these interventions, or the interventions that he had mentioned earlier, today a 2-kilogram packet of maize flour is selling at a low of 145 shillings and a high of 175, depending on the brand, down from 250 shillings. A gorogoro of maize is selling at between 60 and 75 shillings. That is directly lifted from the address of the President. The Speaker, I have taken time and traveled far and wide to validate that very statement by the President. The Speaker, this statement by the President is not true. I was in Vihiga County, Luanda, on Sunday, and I took the pain to go around and ask the people of Luanda whether the price of gorogoro was retailing at 70 shillings. And all of them said the least that you can get is 90 shillings. But in most cases, it's 100 and 110 shillings. Mr. Speaker, today, I sent my people from my office, my staff, paid by the Parliamentary Service Commission, to go around the supermarkets and establish the price of maize flour. And they returned the verdict that the lowest that they found was 149 and the highest was 235 shillings. Mr. Speaker, I know that the President relies on the advice of his technical team to deliver certain speeches. On this one, they have left a lot of egg on the face of the President. They have misled him, and he has miscommunicated to this nation. Mr. Speaker, the matter of food prices in this country, it doesn't know political affiliations. It doesn't matter whether you subscribe to the ideals of the Kenya Kwanza administration or the ideals of the Azimio government in waiting. It doesn't matter. The Speaker, the only thing that matters is that people want to have food on the table. And this government, Mr. Speaker, has done too little to deal with the matter of the cost of living. I am happy, Mr. Speaker, that we have the National Dialogue Committee that is
Senator Sigei.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I first of all want to appreciate the fact that the Honorable Senator Wambua indeed can acknowledge that this particular speech made reference to some commitments which were made, and also those commitments have already been achieved to the benefit of the Kenyans. Mr. Speaker, his option to tell us that last Sunday he was in Rwanda and he also went ahead to confirm the prices is not what has been given in the speech. Is also something that I can say. I come from an agricultural zone where the prices sometimes even are below that which the president quoted in his speech. Mr. Speaker, I must appreciate the fact that we have had challenges, and this is truly acknowledged in the speech by the president, that indeed when we came into office, we had as much challenges as those which were given in the speech and those which were not given. History will never be forgotten as you push towards achieving the plans that you have. And the frankness in the speech by the president, in the commitments which were made, and the achievements which have been made cannot be ignored. We cannot, Mr. Speaker, say that we have achieved 100% of the promises which were made. That one is acknowledged. But where were we and where we are is something that the speech indeed acknowledged in a number of its provisions. One of which, Mr. Speaker, is the cost of living. Honorable Speaker, the President indeed acknowledged in very many paragraphs. Out of this, I can very well recall that paragraph 15 of 102 speech by the President is where he indeed made specific comments on the efforts the government has done. And it's true, he has acknowledged, my colleague has acknowledged the fact that one of the items that the National Dialogue Committee has given itself to discuss and come out with a proposal on how to deal with is the cost of living. And in that particular speech, Mr. Speaker, it is acknowledged that it is not, it's not a one-off thing. It's not something that we can just go across in the shops and buy. A cost of living, or the cost of living is a process. It is something that begins somewhere and takes time. And one of the ways within which the cost of living has been addressed by this administration is on the effort that we have been told in the speech about the agriculture sector. The support with which the government has given is not only towards bringing down the cost of maize. It has gone across. It deals with maize, it deals with milk, where there are efforts to ensure that we add value to the produce from our farmers, and by extension, we will fetch better prices in the market. That same effort is in enlisting the farmers so that we have a database of who are the people whom we need to reach out to in order to get government support. We acknowledge the fact that not all of us are farmers. Even in this particular house, Mr. Speaker, not all of us can also do the same thing. There are various people with various engagements and commitments where this particular speech acknowledges that those who are in agriculture are supported. Those who are in business are supported. And in this case, there is particular reference to the people in the small sector holdings, where the Hustler Fund, which they have intentionally decided to say it has not helped, is acknowledged. This is an approach that the government made in its campaign to reach out to the small business community. And indeed, the statistics which we were given has confirmed that it is not only the small business people who have borrowed this money, it has gone beyond that. And the second phase of this fund, Mr. Speaker, has equally been alluded to, where instead of reaching out now to the single business entrepreneurs, we've gone to groups where, by extension, we are going to support them by borrowing. This borrowing, Mr. Speaker, touches the business community in two ways. One, by supporting them to enhance their business enterprises, and also the approach which led to the removal of a number of these people from the bureau where they had been listed as non-credit worthy, where somebody is able to borrow a facility. In extension, that particular person will be supporting the business and enhancing his or her credit worthiness. Mr. Speaker, sir, this particular speech gave Kenyans the hope that we gave them in the course of the campaigns. And that particular hope is what keeps us and keeps the Kenyans going in terms of seeing tomorrow and achieving the dreams that they have had. One of the things that we must also not forget, Mr. Speaker, is the independence that this particular administration sought and has indeed provided to independent institutions, one of which was the immediate appointment of the 6 judges. I am a practitioner in the judicial sector, and I know the importance of having to recruit judges and give them their independence. That alone is something that takes justice, not to only those who go to court, but to the rest of the Kenyans. Giving an independent management to the judiciary fund, which is enhanced to 3 billion Kenya shillings, is a very important aspect in building the independence of judiciary, enhancing access to justice, and by extension, it is expanding job opportunities, because by this fund, the judiciary has been given more opportunities to employ. This is what we every day cry. Very young Kenyans, very many young Kenyans have gone to school, they are reaching out, seeking for opportunities to be employed, and by this fund alone, we create employment to very many Kenyans. Beyond that, Mr. Speaker, the effort in the housing sector, the affordable housing sector, where we have not more than in the period we've been in office, the Kenyans have been given the opportunity to also not only go and get these houses, but it has been an opportunity to create more employment. A good number of my friends who sit in the minority side, Mr. Speaker, have participated in a number of those sessions where the affordable housing programs are being launched. In this way, it is on the one hand enhancing availability of housing, on the other hand, giving Kenyans the opportunity to get employment and also open up for the business community to supply the materials towards this construction, whether it is the fundis who've been trained or the guys who are owners of various hardware facilities. Mr. Speaker, I want to applaud the efforts that this administration has done, and the speech by the president is one of the very honest speeches where he has alluded to the challenges the administration has gone through and the efforts the administration which he leads is pushing in order to make Kenya a better place. And in this way, Mr. Speaker, Kenya is going to be a better place in the near future. As I end, Mr. Speaker, one of the most important things which we can't forget is where a number of Kenyans are unable to also sustain their business enterprises because of the debt bracket that this country has done. The commitment by the government and the commitment by the president that there will be a bullet payment of the outstanding amount in advance is a show of the direction the country is headed to. And I am sure where we are able to make this payment by December as committed by the president in his speech, we are going to be opening up this country so that investors can also have confidence to come across, and also the rest of the world, where we have, by the way, by a number of the visits that the head of state has made, been opening up Kenya for investments globally. Mr. Speaker, I want to applaud and ask that the effort this administration is doing goes towards making Kenya a better place to live in. Mr. Speaker, I thank you for the opportunity.
Senator Beth Siengo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity. I raise to differ, to disagree, and refuse the false promises, false hopes, and failed expectations of Kenyans that were contained in the presidential address. Mr. Speaker, sir, it saddens my heart to see the President of the Republic of Kenya get to address honorable members of parliament in this country and fail to give Kenyans hope. The expectations that Kenyans have had in this new administration. My expectation as Senator Beth Siengo was for the president, first of all, to apologize to Kenyans for lying to them, for false promises, and making life more difficult for
What is
Kenyans
the point of
to
order,
live in this
Senator
country.
Mungatana? Senator Beth Siengo, kindly take it.
This is a house of record, Mr. Speaker. Irrespective of how you feel, whether you like a person or you cannot use words like lying. It's not parliamentary, Mr. Speaker. And we have already finished 1 year. Some of these things should not be happening, Mr. Speaker. No, you can't say lying. That's not parliamentary, my young daughter.
Senator Mungatana, you've made your point of order. Senator Chirangei, kindly hold your horses. Senator Chirangei. Senator Beth Siengo, this is a house of rules and procedure.
Yes, sir. I
Kindly,
know,
as
and I
you make
recognize
your-
that.
As you make your contribution, kindly be guided by rules and procedure and use parliamentary language.
Mr. Speaker, sir, it is good to follow and to use parliamentary language. But when one makes a promise that has never been fulfilled, what do we call that? Mr. Speaker, sir, when Kenyans...
Senator Beth Siengo, the reason why I'm guiding you is to help you take your point home by using parliamentary language. If you insist, you know exactly what will befall you. Proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. I am guided, but the challenges facing Kenyans are too enormous. The cost of living is unmanageable. The prices of fuel cannot even be imagined. Mr. Speaker, when the President of the Republic of Kenya talks of transforming economy by giving loans and supporting Kenyans to ask for loans where they are expected to repay, this is not a new thing. It has been happening. Kenyans have been living on very difficult conditions of borrowing and repaying those loans. I don't see how it is a new way of transforming the economy. Mr. Speaker, sir, when we talk of giving Kenyans hope, it will start with practical things that the current administration is doing to improve the living standards of Kenyans. Allow me to say that on inclusivity, it also saddens my heart. When this Kenya Kwanza administration was doing their campaigns, they talked of how they would stand by women, support women, appoint more women, ensure more women are elected, ensure that more women are appointed. It is disappointing to see the same women who have been played games on are misused, are struggling, are crying, even to take their children to school, even to place food on the table for their children. Mr. Speaker, sir, as representatives of the people of this great nation of Kenya, we must speak the truth, and we should not stand here to lie to Kenyans how the current administration.
What is the point of order, Senator Chirangei?
I stand under standing order number 98, 103, and 105. You have directed, unless you will now need to invoke standing order number 121 for disorderly conduct. You have directed that the senator uses parliamentary language, but she continues to use the word lie. And we have been here more than 1 year, Mr. Speaker. I have been offering free lessons to any person like her so that they can understand what you can say in the floor. You can disagree with government, which is okay, and unless there is a problem, because you just kindly use parliamentary language. You can say disagree, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, is it in order to decline your directions that you have said, let us, all of us, use parliamentary language? Mr. Speaker, respectfully, If she continues with the same, can you invoke standing order number 121 on disorderly conduct and we allow her to go and enjoy afternoon siesta? I thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Senator Betsiengo, I have advised you on what is and what is not parliamentary language.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I stand guided.
I'm still speaking. You have insisted, despite my guidance, to use unparliamentary language. I will therefore proceed to caution you. Secondly, before you proceed, just as a way of helping you, the debate before us, we are debating on a motion on the President's address to Parliament. What you ought to debate here, it is the address made by the President. And I hope you have it before you. It has 1 or 2 bullets. If any of those bullets you're not agreeing with, you point them out. I'm referring to paragraph 100 of the President's address. He said this, I do not agree because of A, B, and C. That's how honorable members debate honorably. Proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If I may change the wording, untruthful statements amounts to not telling the Kenyans the truth. Mr. Speaker, sir, it is good that I stand guided, but sincerely I'm holding the speech in my hand. If I may look at point...
Senator Betsiengo, I'll continue guiding you because I need you to continue contributing as opposed to asking you to withdraw from the chamber. I guided you pretty well that what we are debating now is the address made by the President to Parliament in a joint sitting. An address that you must have a copy before you. Our debate is confined to that address, not to some campaign pledges made in Vihiga. It is a contribution, a debate on what you have before you. Anything else is beyond this motion. So restrict yourself to what is there. Lift out what you think you don't disagree and tell us what you think you do not agree. Lift out what you agree and tell us what you agree. That is the essence of this debate.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
It may be untrue to you, it may be true to others. Proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. When I mentioned on the campaigns, it is just expounding on some points, sir. Thank you for your guidance. As I had indicated, I'm holding a copy of the speech. And when I expound on a point or explaining, because I don't expect honorable members in this House also to support that which is not true. That is my point, sir. Looking at point 1.2, that is 12, where the speech indicates that the leadership has transformed the national political conversation from personalities to issues, from regional or ethnic license to opportunities. Mr. Speaker, my heart is bleeding. Because when we are talking of opposition leadership as the alternative government in waiting, we are ready.
Order,
yes.
Order, honorable members. Of course,
we are ready to offer.
Of course, the opposition is a government in waiting. Proceed.
we are ready to offer better leadership, to offer truthful promises, and to deliver to the Kenyans. Because Kenyans want development. Kenyans want to live a life that they will be proud to be Kenyans, but not to feel downtrodden, depressed, crying every day, worrying of what will be the price of fuel tomorrow be. It is unfortunate. From the speech, point number 14, I would say I disagree with this because there is a lot of wastage by this government. On Monday, we were treated to a spectacular thing where we saw people flying from one county to another using chartered planes, choppers, where the costs of hiring a chopper ranges between 200 to 300 thousand Kenyan shillings. Yet, there is a Kenyan waiting for their children who have completed class 8, sat for their KCPE, and they don't know where to get school fees from. There are Kenyans who are going to bed hungry. They don't know where to get the next meal from.
What is the point of order, Senator Boni?
Mr. Speaker, Senator Siengo is quite right to laud the wastage in government. But it's in order to do so in total ignorance of the fact that this government has a policy on transport. When a public servant travels...
Under what standing order? Are you giving information
misleading,
or you're raising on a point of order?
I am rising on point of order number 105, Mr. Speaker, to compel... don't
order,
be angry.
Senator Eddy.
It is debate. What is
Proceed,
the anger
Senator
for?
Boni.
Yeah. My view, if it is wrong, you'll bring yours which is right, isn't it? Mr. Speaker, sir, the government has a policy on transport. And public servants are free to go for other options if they find that policy is not convenient. A public servant moving from Nairobi to a function in the periphery has a public vehicle with a work ticket.
What is your point of order, Senator Boni?
She is misleading the people that we are using state resources to hire choppers when we know that some of our ministers are millionaires. They can afford their own choppers, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Beth Siengo, proceed to conclude your remarks, please.
Thank you, sir. I'm very sure that Senator Boni Alwale, my good friend, the bullfighter,
proceed to make your remarks, Senator Siengo.
knows that I am well educated. When he calls me ignorant, Mr. Speaker, sir, I can't understand which standing order allows him to call me ignorant. Mr. Speaker, sir, allow me to conclude by saying that I'm also very sure that Senator Boni Alwale knows that the transport policy that the government may have does not allow wastage in the government for public resources. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Thank you, Senator Aaron Cheriot.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I am elated this afternoon listening to members debate the President's speech for the very first time, an opportunity to many of them critique, agree, disagree. Mr. Speaker, I want to begin by lauding the President on very serious departures from the past. For those that have been on the corridors of Parliament for quite a while, you would know that there are many things that have been the hallmarks of presidential speeches which did not feature or were not granted prominence, Mr. Speaker, on that particular day. And of particular note to me, Mr. Speaker, is a reference to the House of a Parliament as a gathering of duly elected representatives of the people giving an account of what their government, under the leadership of President William Ruto, has been able to do to the people of Kenya. Mr. Speaker, you will note that in the past years we've always been treated to rants and chants of my government, my government, my government. It is a single act of patriotism when as a leader you appreciate and you know that the position of a president is a position of public trust, that others have considered you, that this is an opportunity through which you can lead and make the lives of the people that elected you better. Second and most important thing, Mr. Speaker, is to celebrate and appreciate the fact that in all the 102 paragraphs that form the part of this particular speech, the president is spot on 100%, Mr. Speaker. And he speaks and gives an account of policies, programs, legislative interventions, in terms of funding and other policies, Mr. Speaker, that have been undertaken in the last 20 months, Mr. Speaker, of trying to make the lives of Kenyan people better. Thirdly, Mr. Speaker, this conversation cannot be complete and you cannot have a complete picture. And I know that while Mr. President tried to avoid delving into our past, we know for a fact, Mr. Speaker, that it is a past that informs us of the future. He did not tell the country that he found a tattered economy with only 90 million Kenya shillings in the accounts of Central Bank Kenya, that Kenya was like a baby that had scraped the jaws of a crocodile along River Tana, where Senator Mungatana comes from, Mr. Speaker. That this economy had been battered, had been mismanaged, and things were terribly bad. In fact, Mr. Speaker, I agree with those that have argued before, Mr. Speaker, that in the unfortunate event that this government had gone to the very hands that were managing it before September 2022, we would be worse than Ghana today, Mr. Speaker. We would have been auctioned, we would have been victims,
what is
Mr.
the point
Speaker.
of order, Senator Eddy? Senator Eddy, what is the point of order? Senator Eddy, proceed with the point of order, please.
Is Senator Eddy the speaker?
Mr. Speaker, I rise under standing order number 101 and 105. Mr. Speaker, you have ruled when a member of the minority side was submitting on this speech, on the content of this speech and restricted senators to the content of this speech. The majority leader is introducing things that the president did not talk about in this speech. Number one. Number two, on the statement of fact, Mr. Speaker, the majority leader is telling the country that when the president took over office, the national coffers had only 90 shillings. No, he said 90 million shillings. Okay? Mr. Speaker, can he substantiate that statement in the House and tell us a country that was running on 90 million with all the public service components of this country going to trillions of money, Mr. Speaker, is he in order to cast aspersion on our whole country to having been that broke, where the president himself was a deputy president, flying with choppers, driving vehicles that cannot sustain themselves even for a month at 90 million, Mr. Speaker? Is he in order?
Majority Leader, you have made allegation to the extent that when His Excellency the President took over the running of the affairs of this country, at that time, the books of this country were reflecting 90 million at hand. You need to substantiate that. You may either do so right away, or you may do that tomorrow.
Mr. Speaker, I thought there is only one speaker in the House. I am struggling to get your instructions because there is
a whole battalion of...
Osoti, Senator Mogeni, if you proceed in the manner you're proceeding, you'll be watching the majority leader at the lounge. So kindly let me steer.
Mr. Speaker, I want to dissuade you from sending Senator Okongo Mogeni out. These are the few instances he's in the country. So allow him, allow him to enjoy the proceedings of the House. Mr. Speaker, first of all, I will provide...
Yes, Senator Mogeni. Senator.
You cannot let my good friend, Senator of Kericho, to get away with that statement. You know, Mr. Speaker, I took over from Senator of Kericho, and I have looked at his records at the commission, vis-a-vis the times he used to be in this house. In fact, my yardstick has always been to ensure that I don't perform as Cheriot did in traveling. So you should be the last person to speak about traveling. In fact, we are working so hard to ensure that we don't do the kind of travels he did. And Mr. Speaker, you know, the people of Nyamira know that I'm a very diligent
What is your point of order,
person.
Senator Mogeni?
I am challenging Senator Cheriot to withdraw that statement he has made, that this is the only time. You heard him say so, that this is the only time I'm in the House. And Mr. Speaker, you can look at the record. I'm always in this House, Mr. Speaker. So that statement by Senator Cheriot, who is my friend, is imputing bad motive on my person as Senator of Nyamira, and I'm asking him to withdraw and tender an apology to me, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Cheriot, you've made assertion to the fact that the Senator for Nyamira, for the first time, is in the House because he's always out of the country.
Mr. Speaker, I wish to withdraw the word only today, being in the House, but to say that this is one of the rare occasions. Mr. Speaker, it's not as passions because, Senator Eddy, you must appreciate that Senator Okongo Mogeni is a constitutional office holder. The works of a commissioner are such busy that sometimes they may involve travel within and without of these borders. Therefore, it is not a wrong thing to say that the commissioner is busy and travels. And when he has an opportunity to be in the House, it's an important time that he be granted an opportunity.
Senator,
I don't think
Senator
there's
Cheriot,
anything wrong with that, Mr. Speaker.
That is not what you said. Now you're explaining it in a more honorable way.
Yes.
Now proceed to conclude your remarks.
How can I conclude, Mr. Speaker? I have not begun. I have 60 minutes. I will conclude at about 5:30.
Proceed.
Yes. Mr. Speaker, sir, I wish to carry on with debate, and congratulations to His Excellency the President on a brilliant speech that he gave, an account of the work that his administration has done. Of course, Mr. Speaker, I made remarks to the effect that when His Excellency the President took over this administration, as per the CBK records on the bank balances that were maintained, Mr. Speaker, there was only 90 million Kenya shillings.
Senator Maruma, what is your point of order, Senator Cheriot?
Okay.
Now, honorable senators, we need to make progress in this debate.
Yeah,
If you notice, we spend a lot of time on points of order.
Mr. Speaker, I think Senator Cheriot was supposed to substantiate the fact that the coffers had 90 million before.
He was doing exactly that. He was doing exactly that when you rose on a point of order.
How sober?
Senator Eddy, the chair knows exactly what he's doing. You prompt me to do something, I'll throw you out.
I wish Senator Mwaruma was listening, because that's exactly what I was explaining, that I will provide before this House in the next 24 hours the CBK bank balances of GOK at that particular time. Mr. Speaker, it goes beyond saying that things were so bad at that particular time that billions were being withdrawn via WhatsApp messages, Mr. Speaker, and we have it on authority of the control of budget. The constitutional office holder that is allowed, Mr. Speaker, to grant withdrawals out of the exchequer, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, it is not wrong, Mr. Speaker, to point out, Mr. Speaker, I don't know if I'll be allowed to.
We need to make progress. Let the majority leader conclude his remarks. Proceed.
Mr. Speaker, second thing, Mr. Speaker, is that His Excellency gave an account of programs that have been run by this administration, of course, top of which, Mr. Speaker, featured prominently, is a very successful Hustler Fund initiative, Mr. Speaker, that has lent out billions to ordinary citizens, Mr. Speaker. More than 10 million Kenyans have borrowed. I don't know what are the latest statistics from CBK on bank customers, Mr. Speaker, but if you are to rank the Hustler Fund hand-to-hand, site-to-site with various commercial banks of this country, Mr. Speaker, it will prominently feature among the top 2, if not the top 3. These are ordinary citizens that previously, Mr. Speaker, would not have had ease of access to credit. We have rescued ordinary hustlers, Mr. Speaker, who are borrowing at 300%, Mr. Speaker, to now borrowing at 8%, Mr. Speaker. In fact, Mr. Speaker, I had one of the leaders speak, I think it was Senator Sifuna, because I watched yesterday, celebrating about the default rate. He ought to be ashamed of himself, Mr. Speaker, because he knows that as a leader, he is one of the people who told ordinary citizens to take that money and not pay, without informing them, Mr. Speaker, that us as members of parliament, when we take our 3% mortgage, we make sure that we repay so that we are able, Mr. Speaker, to borrow again. Such bad example from leaders and speeches have inspired many young people to be misled. I've seen further down the president's speech that an amnesty is being extended to many of these young people. And we have been cited examples of people from across the country, from the coast to northeastern, to the western part of the country, Mr. Speaker. People who have borrowed in excess of 1,000 times and saved many times and are able now to transact and do business, Mr. Speaker, courtesy of this revolutionary product, Mr. Speaker. I wish, Mr. Speaker, to urge and insist on the President, Mr. Speaker, to continue investing in that particular product and even double the amount which ordinary citizens can borrow, Mr. Speaker. I am aware, Mr. Speaker, because I represent the ordinary people that are continuing to borrow and are partaking of this particular product, Mr. Speaker. Their particular speech is a fertilizer subsidy program, Mr. Speaker. That because of that specific intervention, we have added more than 200,000 bags of maize, Mr. Speaker, into the economy. That's why, and it is an irrefutable fact, Mr. Speaker, that today, if you walk into any supermarket in this country, you will buy a packet of funga for anywhere between 145 to 180 Kenya shillings. You know very well, Mr. Speaker, that the obtaining price at the time this administration came into office to bring down the cost of living, Mr. Speaker, that ordinary citizens are able to see, Mr. Speaker, that because of us subsidizing production, as opposed to the lopsided economies that was being run by the cartels who were in charge previously, Mr. Speaker, where you're subsidizing consumption, only benefiting the millers and the big boys of this town who are running big corporations and big farms, Mr. Speaker. The person that we have subsidized and made sure that they're able to produce cheaply and competitively is a farmer of the Republic of Kenya. If you grow across this republic, from every corner, Mr. Speaker, they have been recipient of this particular program. And I am aware, Mr. Speaker, that even as we go into this financial year, that program shall be made better. Mr. Speaker, part of the reason why I celebrate this particular program, Mr. Speaker, is that I know that before the coming into place of this particular administration, previous administration had tried to register the farmers of this country, Mr. Speaker. And they were being given bills of running into billions of shillings, that this is the amount that is going to take to register farmers, find out the size of land that they have in this particular republic. But courtesy of the ingenuity of this administration, Mr. Speaker, using the provincial administration and asking our chiefs and ACCs to go out to the farmlands and register our farmers, this project was done, Mr. Speaker, at near zero expenses to the GOK. And more than 5 million farmers of this country, Mr. Speaker, have been registered. We are now able to tell, Mr. Speaker, what is the size of land under their cultivation, what they are cultivating, how much fertilizer they need, Mr. Speaker. Making policy decision that is driven by data is a key to the successful implementation of any manifesto, Mr. Speaker. And I laud the President for leading that particular effort, Mr. Speaker, because I know with such interventions, Mr. Speaker, the farmers of Kenya can only get better. It is my hope and aspiration, Mr. Speaker, that this program shall be extended to all the crops and not just maize farmers that are doing this under the subsistence farming, Mr. Speaker. I believe that as they model this particular program, they'll make it in a better way, that it shall be crop-specific, so that tea farmers are able to benefit enormously from this program, sugarcane farmers, Mr. Speaker, coffee farmers, Mr. Speaker, and so on and so forth. Mr. Speaker, of course, I know for a fact, and this is something that we need to check as a House, Mr. Speaker, is to ensure that our farmers access this subsidy fertilizer at the nearest point, Mr. Speaker. I know, because this was the initial test run, Mr. Speaker, many of them had to travel long distances to go and pick a bag or two of fertilizer, Mr. Speaker. It is my hope, Mr. Speaker, that the Ministry of Agriculture can team up with our agrovets, at least in every village, Mr. Speaker, that I know in this republic that has a farming population. There is an agrovet. And in these agrovets, Mr. Speaker, they can link up together with our Ministry of Agriculture so that a farmer walks to the center closest to their home and picks up this subsidized fertilizer, go and till their land and produce cheaply, Mr. Speaker. Of course, Mr. Speaker, we know for a fact that despite the fact that the government has worked extremely hard to bring down the cost of inflation from a high of 9.8 last September to now downwards of 6, and it can even get better, Mr. Speaker, as we continue to produce and tap in onto the long-range seasons that we are having, Mr. Speaker, there is need to invest further in post-harvest handling, Mr. Speaker, because we know many of our farmers continue to lose almost 20 to 30% of their products, Mr. Speaker, because of post-harvest losses, Mr. Speaker. It is my sincere hope that with the assurance that was given by the head of state in his presidential speech, that this is being addressed, and he alluded to the fact that on the day that he was speaking before Parliament, the first batch of large-scale and small-scale dryers for maize farmers, Mr. Speaker, and wheat and rice, Mr. Speaker, was docking in the port of Mombasa, Mr. Speaker, that the same can be cleared quickly and get into the farms and help our farmers so that they do not lose even a single bag of the crop that they have produced and sent to us, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I know the President is speaking to the values and the aspirations and the challenges that you continue to have as a country, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, corruption is a challenge that we continue to face, Mr. Speaker. And the question that we must ask ourselves is, we have set up EACC for almost 10 or even more years, thanks to the new constitution, Mr. Speaker. But 2 administrations down the line, this being the 3rd, we continue to see an increase, Mr. Speaker, in corrupt practices in our public offices, in private sector, Mr. Speaker. We must begin to ask very difficult questions of ourselves as the people of Kenya. Whether is the issue just about the institutions that because many times if you listen to Kenyans, they want to tell you EACC needs to do this, DCI should do the other, but without addressing this particular challenge of corruption from a values problem. Mr. Speaker, we must begin to teach our children right from school, and even to us that are in leadership, Mr. Speaker, about the values that we expose, the values that we expect to see in other people, Mr. Speaker, whether the same can be replicated. Mr. Speaker, I see members do, even us here in Parliament, there are many things that members do ignorantly, and they think that perhaps that is not an act of corruption. But if checked under the prism of values, Mr. Speaker, Chapter 10 of our Constitution, you are actually not living up to the expectation of this Constitution. How many times, Mr. Speaker, for example, do you see members, particularly on Wednesday morning, Mr. Speaker, and I don't want to say which side of the House is fond of doing this, walk in, sign, and leave without making any contribution or even sitting to listen to the proceedings of the House, so that the House just captures and records that you are part and parcel. You are cheating the system, Mr. Speaker, but is that a reflection of the values that have been exposed under Article 10, Mr. Speaker? You ought to do better as a leader, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Eddie, what's your point of order?
Is the Speaker
Your chair had ruled on 101, Mr. Speaker, on parliamentary language here. And a member of the minority side was gagged for using the term, President is lying and the members of the majority are lying. What is so different in the using the word lying and throwing aspersion on the members of parliament and saying they're cheating, Mr. Speaker? Is the majority leader in order to throw these aspersions and further use non-parliamentary language by indicating that they are members of this house who are cheating the system, Mr. Speaker? Is it in order?
Majority Leader, I want to urge you to restrain yourself from the language and use the parliamentary language.
You need to listen to what I said. I didn't say members are cheating. Cheating the system is completely different from you lying or cheating. Mr. Speaker, cheating the system is when a gadget or a particular system get the impression that you have done something which you haven't. When you log into this system, it assumes that you have sat through the sittings and you will be marked as having been present. That is what is called in simple English, Senator Eddy, cheating a system. It's not the same with cheating. It's basic English, Mr. Speaker.
Majority Leader, proceed.
Yes.
And restrain yourself on the language that you're using. Make sure you...
No, what I need to
are
restrain
within
myself
parliamentary language.
is the kind of English that I
Proceed,
use, Mr.
proceed,
Speaker.
proceed.
Perhaps it will find better favor, Mr. Speaker, if I spoke in a simple language, which everybody will appreciate and say that I haven't misled or insulted anybody, Mr. Speaker, because it is my plain understanding. Rarely do I lose my cool or speak things ill of others. In fact, Mr. Speaker, I was gracious enough not to mention who normally does these kind of things, yet the whole House knows, Mr. Speaker. So allow me to perhaps proceed, Mr. Speaker, without having to respond to... Mr. Speaker, you need to protect me from Senator Eddy, because otherwise I'll easily be distracted. Mr. Speaker, I will continue to speak on a very important topic that the President touched, about the transformation that is happening in our economy. Mr. Speaker, it is a fact that cannot be disputed that our debt to GDP ratio is at an all-time high. That as we speak today, at 71% debt exposure, it simply means, Mr. Speaker, that for every 100 shillings that you are collecting, only 29 is left for counties to pay salaries, to do development. Mr. Speaker, it is a fact that not even a magician can work any miracle when you are handed over such an economy. But the question that we need to ask ourselves is, what has the president, what has this administration done? And I agree with him when he reports that this country is on a path of transformation, because the first and the simple basic thing that he has done is to reduce on our fiscal deficit from an upwards of 8 to 9% to 5.4 in this current financial year, Mr. Speaker. And I know for a fact, Mr. Speaker, that there is even a further supplementary budget, which our colleagues in the other House are likely to debate tomorrow, that is lowering that fiscal deficit, Mr. Speaker, to ensure that, one, we live within our means. That, two, Mr. Speaker, we are responsible in our borrowing. That, three, and most importantly, we tell Kenyans the truth that for a long time, Mr. Speaker, we have lived a lie. Mr. Speaker, we are behaving like university or college students that I used to see in our university days, Mr. Speaker, where when they get help money, they want to buy all the flashiest of clothes, they want to buy the nicest of shoes, Mr. Speaker. Then eventually when they arrive at the university, they cannot even afford food, and they are left begging, Mr. Speaker. That is a kind of economy that we have been running for so many years. That's why, Mr. Speaker, when we say that we must tighten our belt, that we must teach our people that you cannot enjoy better services, Mr. Speaker, without having to pay a share of it, it is the truth and nothing can be done about it, Mr. Speaker. I know people, Mr. Speaker, want to play popular, want to play populist politics, Mr. Speaker, on this particular issue of taxation. But we have to be realistic and tell ourselves what are the options that are left with us as a country. Default is not an option. There is no responsible administration that is going to default on its debts, Mr. Speaker, and look straight into the eye of its citizens and say, because we did not want to make you feel the burden, allow us to default, Mr. Speaker. We know what has happened to countries that have defaulted, Mr. Speaker. Things will get even worse. But the president is simply telling the country that let me be a responsible father and tell you the hard facts that between you as the adult population today in the Republic of Kenya and the future generations, that is our children, our young people that are in schools, feeling the pain of a country that has been ravaged by debt, Mr. Speaker, we'd rather feel the pinch as a parent generation, Mr. Speaker, so that our children can inherit a sound economy, a country that is thriving, Mr. Speaker, a better nation than what was handed over to us, Mr. Speaker. And I agree with the President on that particular decision. Many a times, Mr. Speaker, people debate, people speak about these particular things. Oh, there's too much taxation, cost of living is too high. There is no assumption, Mr. Speaker. I know each and every part of the country is complaining about this particular issue. But the difference between us and our critics, Mr. Speaker, is that we are honest with our people, telling them that this is the cause, this is the reason why we are facing this particular situation, but there is hope in the hinterland, Mr. Speaker, that the things that we are doing today are for a better 2024, a better 2025, and an even more prosperous 2030s, Mr. Speaker. Otherwise, Mr. Speaker, if we decided to run a subsidized economy like our colleagues were doing, Mr. Speaker, you will know for a fact that despite the fact, Mr. Speaker, that many people are speaking about the challenges in the fuel sector, for example, you know, Mr. Speaker, that at the time of the coming in of this administration, thanks to the fuel subsidy program that was being run, this present financial year, Mr. Speaker, as we speak today, we are clearing a debt of close to 80 billion Kenya shillings, paying for previous fuel that Kenyans consumed, was not paid for, Mr. Speaker, but it passed and parcel of the bills that we are living today. Up to how long, Mr. Speaker?
Senator Aaron, do you want to be informed by Senator Eddie?
Until, first of all, he learns, Mr. Speaker, how to seek, Mr. Speaker, the attention of the Speaker. That is, you know, Mr. Speaker, in this house you graduate and learn. If he has not known how to use the gadgets, Mr. Speaker, and is using the mouth instead, does he really merit to inform a majority leader, Mr. Speaker?
He has done it. He's done
No,
it.
no, no, no. Mr. Speaker, let me help you.
There's an intervention.
How you get the intervention of the Speaker is that you press and you wait. You don't shout, Mr. Speaker. That is a lesson that I want to pass on to Senator Eddie.
It's been rejected. Proceed, Senator Aaron.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I don't mind being informed by Senator Eddie now that he has learned, so long as he promised, as Mr. Speaker, not to be shouting at the Speaker, Mr. Speaker. But at the next opportunity, he must commit before informing me, Mr. Speaker, that he has learned the lesson of how to seek the attention of the Speaker.
So, proceed to inform Senator
Eddie. You know, majority, and I want to call you a very special name, majority, not even senator. You have talked about a very patent issue on the issue of taxation. And I do agree with you to some extent that we must indeed raise some capital to be able to help our country to deal with the issue of debt. But it can't be that we are going towards over-taxation. Because what I wanted to inform you about is that when you raise the taxes to the extent that we have seen them raised in the past few months, majority, even when you like it or not, businesses have to make a business decision. Are you aware that 30% of our business today that the president found have now made decisions to close their businesses, including Saracen, that is one of the biggest marketing agencies in the country, have decided to cross borders and open offices in other countries so that they can avoid high taxation. The consequence, therefore, becomes that other means of seeking for this revenue befalls the president. And that is why the president now is forced to start looking for resources in other places like ID cards, death certificates, and other things that cannot raise revenue. So high taxation is what we're talking about, and I want to urge you, majority, that let us think about moderate taxation and not this high taxation that is killing business in this country. No, is this a point of information?
Eddie,
Speaker, that one should be declared a point of misinformation, Mr. Speaker, because the things that Eddie is saying are completely, Mr. Speaker, the opposite of things as they know. He needs to check the records of how many new businesses have registered this new financial year alone, Mr. Speaker, because, Mr. Speaker, people can see the transformational path and the journey that Kenya is on. I can tell you for a fact that I know more than 100 businesses that have since set up shop in this country. they wouldn't be reporting. Don't be lied to, Senator Eddy, by many of these fake news reports that you read in our newspapers about countries moving here and the other country. There is no business that comes to do charity in Kenya. They are here because they know this is East Africa's largest economy. The opportunity to make profit here is better than in any other East African country. So nobody should sit here and pretend as if they were doing any charity in Kenya. They are here to make money. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, I laud the policies that have been made. Finally, Mr. Speaker, on this particular issue of taxation, is that Senator Eddy and his team and those that think like him need to read and understand that Kenya's tax to GDP ratio stands at a paltry 17%. If you compare with our peers, countries that you want to compete with, South Africa and Egypt and Nigeria, they are way higher, upwards of 20%, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, we cannot be competing with economies that are not in our region, Mr. Speaker. Smaller economies that are doing less than $50 billion GDP, Mr. Speaker. If we are aspiring to be a stronger economy, if we are aspiring, Mr. Speaker, to be a middle-income nation by 2030 as exposed in Vision 2030, Mr. Speaker, then this is the right path that we have to accept, Mr. Speaker, that there will be temporary pain, Mr. Speaker, for permanent pleasure in the future, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, I agree with the decision and the taxation policies that have been proposed to the particular country. In fact, even on this controversial issue of the ID, Senator Eddy, do you know that the 100 shillings that you are talking about has been in existence, I don't know, since 19 what? I took my ID more than 20 years ago. Mr. Speaker. I paid 100. Is it the argument of those that are saying government should not review whatsoever that 100 shillings, Mr. Speaker, that even the factors of production alone can inform? It may not be the 2,000 shillings, Mr. Speaker, that is being proposed, but at least, Mr. Speaker, we must agree that I don't expect a president that I elected into office, President William Ruto, to go to China to beg for money to come and print IDs for my children if I can pay for the same, Mr. Speaker, and so on and so forth on many others, Mr. Speaker. There must be a review, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, finally, Mr. Speaker, finally, Mr. Speaker, I want to urge our colleagues from the minority side that even as you critique government, please offer alternatives. Let us hear your ideas. You are not strangers. You are not new to this country. We have seen you before in office. We know how you operated during the dreaded dark days of the handshake, for example, Mr. Speaker, and the things that used to happen to many people, including members of this House, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, if you disagree, Mr. Speaker, with the policies that are being proposed, be it on financial inclusion, be it on taxation, Mr. Speaker, be it on the subsidy programs that are being run, Mr. Speaker, please offer an alternative. If you have a better idea, Mr. Speaker, we are willing to listen. We will be convinced by the strength of the argument that you carry, not the loudness of your noise, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, I want to laud the President for a speech. Mr. Speaker, I should have been at the time because of all the interruptions of Senator Omogeni, Senator Eddy. But in the interest of time, Mr. Speaker, allow me to, yes, I don't mind being informed by Senator Crystal Asige, Mr. Speaker.
Unfortunately, Crystal has not sought for the Senator Asige. Senator Asige.
I don't have the mic. Thank you, Speaker. I just wanted to thank, even as a majority leader concludes his submission, thank him for the parts of his contribution that, well, let me just leave it there, for his contribution. And the information that I would like to give him, and of course to the House, is that he's very well aware that solutions are being offered by many members of Parliament across board from both houses. Even I personally have gotten in touch with the good majority leader, asking for audience, seeking audience with him to discuss matters, especially of persons with disabilities, of youth, of women, so that he can listen on a one-on-one basis, not just back and forth here on the floor of the House. Everyone is busy and everyone is walking out, in and out. I wanted his unequivocal attention so that he can hear the issues of persons with disabilities, which is the mandated group, or special interest group that I have been put here to represent. And unfortunately, 1 year on, we have not met. I know he's a very busy man. I understand. Sky team folk, of course, are very busy. But those of us on ground are waiting for his feet to be planted here where we are, so that he can hear our very, very elaborate suggestions on how the government, through the executive, can improve the lives of persons with disabilities, youth, and women.
Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I am guided. Mr. Speaker, I was to attend the launch of Senator Crystal Asige's album launch, but I sent Senator Cherargei instead to represent me. And I have seen his videos dancing and ably responding to the positive vibes. I want to assure my good friend Senator Asige that now that I have concluded my remarks, I will move over to sit next to her and grant her 1 hour, if she has the time, 2 hours, or even the entire evening, Mr. Speaker, to listen to the proposals that she's making.
Senator Oburu Oginga.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. I want to add my voice to the views given by my fellow senators on the speech by His Excellency, the President, William Samoei Ruto, to both houses of Senate and National Assembly. And Mr. Speaker, from the very onset, I want to say that I was not very happy. Mr. Speaker, I was not very happy because I did not get what I wanted to get from the President. Mr. Speaker, I expected the President to address the issue which the majority leader is saying should not bother us, which is the cost of living. Mr. Speaker, the cost of living is a very, very emotive issue in our country today, and it is an issue which we cannot wish away. Whether we like it or not, it is an issue which must be addressed squarely, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the President talked about national values. The national values which he's talked about, I think should be done in a practical way, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, if you look at the records or the happenings, Mr. Speaker, you recall not very long ago, when our people were going for demonstrations, and they were going for demonstrations using the nationally provided or provisions in the Constitution of the right of Kenyans to demonstrate, to picket, and to hold public rallies. Mr. Speaker, the police came out to, first of all, demand that we get permission. The question of permits,
what is your point
Mr.
of order?
Speaker, I hope I'm not going to be unnecessarily disrupted by
Your time will be frozen. Your time will be frozen. You will not lose your time.
Whom I respect very much, but
Senator Boni.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise on Standing Order number 105 to challenge the Senator of Siaya, who is my good neighbor back home in Luanda Doho and Luanda Dudi, to retract his statement that the President disappointed him because he never mentioned the cost of living. Mr. Speaker, is in order, knowing that in bullet 15, bullet 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20, the President was talking about, and more specifically, Mr. Speaker, sir, the President told the country that he has established 22 new fish landing sites in the counties of the Lake region and the coast. Is he in order, Mr. Speaker? And went further to say that he has established management units and cooperatives and hatcheries, especially, Mr. Speaker, a hatchery at Kabonyo and Shimoni. Is he in order to mislead the public?
Senator Oburu,
Mr. Speaker, sir, I'm asking my brother, Honorable Halwale, to be patient with me so that I can finish what I'm saying. Mr. Speaker, I did not say that he did not mention about the cost of living. What I'm saying is that he did not offer any solutions, which in my view, in Halwale's views, he offered them. In my own view, he did not. In my own view, he did not at all, Mr. Speaker, because those things he's talking about, like those beaches, the what, you know, Mr. Speaker, you don't transform abyss management unit into a cooperative and you say you have helped the people. Those are management units which are meant to regulate the fishing.
Senator Oburu, there is a point of order, and please bear attention to the chair.
Mr. Speaker, I don't know why these people...
Proceed.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I'm standing under standing order number 98. I am standing under order standing number 98. Mr. Speaker, 98. Mr. Speaker, you had given direction, and I want to say you need to use your powers of standing order 121. Because you have clearly directed that let us restrict over and again our argument, our reasoning, our presentation within the confines of the State of the Nation address by the President. Mr. Speaker, I want to request even the table office to provide for free both soft and hard copy to members so that they can restrict. Mr. Speaker, is it in order for Senator Oburu Odinga, the youth leader, to mislead the House and defy your ruling? Mr. Speaker, I request that you kick in standing order number 121 for disorderly conduct and be thrown out, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Oburu, and listen to the chair, Senator Oburu. Now, earlier on you were in the House when the chair made a ruling to the effect that our debate should be confined to the speech by the President. I know in the course of your contribution, you might say comments outside the speech, but I would like you to make sure that it's within the spirit of the speech by the President and also be parliamentary language. Proceed, Senator Oburu.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I'm trying to do my best to confine myself within the speech. But, Mr. Speaker, these people on the other side are not being patient at all. Mr. Speaker, they are not being patient, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, because, okay, Honorable Cherargei, please be patient. The Honorable... okay, I withdraw that. I've said Honorable Cherargei. Honorable Cherargei, please listen. I'm restricting myself to what the President said. The President talked about national values. And when he talked about national values, I'm relating it to what happened to us in relation to national values. His own officers are not keeping national values. They send police to kill people when they are exercising their democratic rights. And Mr. Speaker, that, yes, and that's, Mr. Speaker, that's what I'm saying. Mr. Speaker, secondly, the President said when one of his achievements was to pay the judiciary 3 billion shillings when he took over.
Senator Mandago.
Mr. Speaker.
You have not sought for... Senator Oburu, just take your seat.
Honorable Speaker, I would not have wished to interrupt Senior, and Senior knows I have a lot of tremendous respect for him. But as per Standing Order 105, Honorable Speaker, is it in order for him, for Senator Oburu to say the government sent the police to kill people? Is it in order, Mr. Speaker? And if that is so, can he provide evidence of a command, Honorable Speaker?
Senator Oburu, your statement, Senator Oburu.
That people were killed by police.
Senator Oburu, it's good to listen to the chair. I wanted to invite you to also make comments as to whether the government sent police indeed, if that is what you meant.
Mr. Speaker, can you repeat?
To kill people.
Huh? If the government...
Can Senator Oburu be heard in silence? Senator Osotsi,
Yeah,
you are
thank
not
you.
on the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I have stated that in fact, Mr. Speaker, if you heard the IG, he specifically said that the opposition had hired dead bodies from the mortuaries and displayed them as dead bodies. Mr. Speaker, that was a very